Summary of Getting to Yes. Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In. By Roger Fisher, William L. Uy and Bruce M. Patton. Judging negotiation styles, hard versus soft. The most common form of negotiation involves successively taking on and giving up positions. The two sides bargain over positions and lock themselves into their individual stances. In its standard form, this kind of positional bargaining requires many separate decisions: what to offer, what to reject, how big a concession to make. The process is difficult and tedious. Tactics such as stonewalling or threatening to walk out become common. Positional bargaining increases the time and cost of reaching an agreement and the risk that none will be produced at all. The contest of wills strains and shatters relationships. Bitter feelings may last a lifetime. Many people recognize the risk of hard positional bargaining and take a softer approach. They treat the other side as friends and emphasize agreement as their goal, rather than victory. It is standard to make offers and concessions, to be amiable and trust the other side, and to yield to avoid confrontation. Much negotiating within families and among friends takes place this way. This is efficient in producing agreements quickly, but the agreements may not be wise ones that take each party's underlying interests into account. Any negotiation where the relationship is the primary concern runs the risk of producing a shabby agreement. Those who pursue soft, friendly positional bargaining are vulnerable to a negotiator who plays hard. Change the game. Should you use soft or hard positional bargaining? The answer is neither. Instead, change the game. The Harvard Negotiation Project developed an alternative, principled negotiation, or negotiation on the merits, which has 4 basic points. 1. People, human beings don't communicate clearly and they mix their egos with their positions. Attack the problem instead of the people. 2. Interests, pay attention to interest areas to overcome the flaw of concentrating on stated positions. Focus on interests, not positions. Work to satisfy the underlying interests that led the parties to adopt their positions in the first place. 3. Options, designing optimal solutions while under pressure is hard. Having to make decisions in the presence of your adversary narrows your vision. If you have a lot at stake, or spend all your time searching for one perfect solution, you may inhibit your creativity. To offset these barriers, set a designated time for generating possible solutions and options that advance shared interests and creatively settle differences. 4. Criteria, some negotiators can get what they want simply by being stubborn. Counter such a negotiator by insisting that a single voice is not enough. Demand that the agreement reflect a fair, objective criteria, independent of each side's mere desires. Base the terms on unbiased standards such as market value, expert opinion, custom or law. No one has to give in. Both sides can work together for a fair solution. Can these principles work if the other side has a stronger bargaining position or is richer or better connected? What use is talking about interests, options, or standards in that case? Every negotiation has inflexible realities. What if, while you are attacking the problem on its merits, they attack you? No method can succeed if the other side has all the leverage. The most any negotiating method can do is protect you from accepting an agreement you should reject, and help you make the most of the assets you have. While talking about interests, options, and standards is wise, efficient and genial, have a strategy if the other side won't play. Try to change the game back to a principled negotiation. Using a bottom line. One way negotiators try to protect themselves from a bad outcome is by establishing a worst acceptable outcome, or bottom line, to help them resist the pressures and temptations of the moment. But this protection involves high costs. If you decide in advance that nothing the other side says could make you change your bottom line, you limit your ability to use what you learned during the negotiation. The bottom line is almost guaranteed to be too rigid. It inhibits imagination and undermines the incentive to create a custom-made solution. Know your BATNA. A bottom line may protect you from a very bad agreement, but it may also keep you from devising a solution it would be wise to accept. The alternative to a bottom line is to identify your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, BATNA. Measure any proposed agreement against this standard. It will protect you from accepting a very bad agreement and keep you from rejecting an agreement that is in your interest. A BATNA is flexible enough to allow the investigation of creative solutions. Compare your proposal to your BATNA to see which better satisfies your interests. If you do not think carefully about your BATNA, you are negotiating with your eyes closed. You may be too optimistic, thinking that you have many other choices. Even if your alternative is fixed, without thinking carefully about it, you may not appreciate the consequences of activating that alternative: a lawsuit, contested divorce, or strike. Being too committed to reaching an agreement is an even greater danger. Having a tentative answer to what happens if negotiations break down is essential if you plan to conduct negotiations wisely. Your power in negotiations is tied to the quality of your BATNA, not to resources such as wealth, physical strength, or political connections. Wealth can even weaken the negotiating position of someone trying to get a lower price. Relative negotiating power depends upon how attractive the option of not reaching agreement is to each party. Generating your BATNA. Follow these 3 distinct operations to generating possible BATNAs. First, invent a list of actions you might take if no agreement is reached. Then improve the ideas with the most potential and convert them into practical alternatives. Finally, tentatively select the best alternative. This is your BATNA. Improving the terms of any negotiated agreement is easier with a good BATNA. Knowing where you are going will give you the confidence to break off negotiations. Willingness to stop negotiating lets you present your interests more forcefully. Reflect on the other side's BATNA. Considering the other side's BATNA can better prepare you for negotiation. Knowing their alternatives lets you estimate what to expect during negotiation. If their BATNA is so good that they won't need to negotiate on the merits, consider what you can do to change their BATNA. If a power plant is polluting a local area with noxious gases and their BATNA is to ignore protests and continue business as usual, perhaps you will have to file an injunction to stop their operations. That makes their BATNA less attractive than it was. When both sides have attractive BATNAs, the best outcome may well be not to reach agreement. In such a case, a successful negotiation may be one where you amicably, efficiently decide to look elsewhere rather than reaching agreement. Negotiation jiu-jitsu. If the BATNA approach fails, you could resort to a strategy focused on what the other side may do. This involves countering the basic moves of positional bargaining to redirect their attention to the merits of the case. This is called negotiation jiu-jitsu. When you play the positional bargaining game, defending your position locks you in and attacking their position locks them in. A lot of time and energy is wasted in a useless push-pull cycle of attack and defense. So what can you do if pushing back does not work? Don't push back. When they attack, don't defend. Break the cycle by refusing to react. Just as in the martial arts of judo and jiu-jitsu, you avoid directly pitting your strength against your opposition. Instead, use your skill to step aside, using their strength against them. In practice, negotiation jiu-jitsu deals with the 3 typical attack maneuvers: 1. The forceful assertion of their position; 2. The attack on your ideas; and 3. The personal attack. The forceful assertion of their position: when the other side presents their opinion, do not attack it, treat it as one possible option. Think about ways to improve it. Discover the interests that lie below the surface of their position. Assume that every position is a genuine attempt to address the basic concerns of each side. Ask how the position addresses the problem at hand. Examine their position and the extent that it meets the interests of all parties, or how it might be improved to do so. To direct attention toward improving the options, hypothetically discuss what would happen if their position was accepted. When they understand what an unrealistic option that is to your side, they may become more willing to accept alternatives. The attack on your ideas: when your ideas are attacked, don't defend them. Invite criticism and advice. Don't ask for your idea to be accepted or rejected, ask what's wrong with it. By examining their negative judgments, you can find their underlying interests and improve your ideas from their point of view. Turn criticism from an obstacle into an essential ingredient of the process. Ask for their advice. Put them in your position and ask what they would do. This leads them to confront your half of the problem. perhaps they will be able to devise a solution that meets your concerns. The personal attack: resist the temptation to defend yourself when the attacks become personal. Sit back and allow the other negotiator to blow off steam. Listen and show you understand what they are saying. When they have finished, recast the personal attack as an attack on the problem. Remember two key tools when employing the negotiation jiu-jitsu strategy: use questions instead of statements, and use silence as a weapon. Questions generate answers while statements create resistance. Questions allow the other side to illustrate its points. Queries can lead the other side to confront the problem. Questions educate instead of criticize. Silence creates the perception of a stalemate. If you ask an honest question and receive an insufficient answer, wait. When people have doubts about what they just said, silence can become quite uncomfortable. Often the other side will feel compelled to break the silence by answering your question in more detail or coming up with a new suggestion. Ask questions, then pause. You are doing some of your most effective negotiating when you are not talking. One-text procedure: call in a mediator. When all else fails, the last resort is to call in a third party. Mediators can separate the people from the problem more easily and direct the discussion to interests and options. They can often suggest some impartial basis for decision-making and reduce the number of decisions needed to reach agreement. The one-text procedure is designed to enable mediators to achieve these goals. To begin, mediators ask not what the negotiators want, but why they want it. They make it clear that they are not asking either side to give up a position. They are merely investigating the possibility that they may be able to make a recommendation, and even that is undetermined at this point. Mediators use this information to make a list of interest and needs. They then ask each side to criticize the list and make improvements. Criticizing is easier than making concessions. Mediators use this criticism to create a rough draft of an agreement. They acknowledge that the agreement has many faults, but they want each side's input before working on it any further. This input is used to create a second draft, still incomplete, but better than the first. The process continues through a third, fourth, and fifth plan. The mediators continue until they feel they can improve the draft no more. At this point, they present the plan to both parties. Now each party has only one decision to make: yes or no. The one-text procedure shifts the game away from positional bargaining and simplifies the process of creating options and deciding jointly on one. This procedure is almost essential for large multilateral negotiations.